Welcome back into another episode of Redzone Talk. I'm Owen Burke here for episode 9 with my highly esteemed award-winning co-host Tim Hunt.
I don't think that's true. I don't know if any of that was true.
Hey man, we don't have enough payroll to get a fact checker yet, so it's running. All right,
Okay,
we're going with it. How are you doing on this lovely Thursday evening?
You know, not too bad for a guy who got like no sleep last night, but I'm ready to rock and roll. That's for dang sure.
We are running hot for the next 90 minutes, that's for sure. 90 to 120. We'll see where we land at. We like to ramble. But we got some stuff to talk about today. Obviously, a lot of football to cover. We got some rule changes for trivia and such. But before we get into all of that jazz, make sure you guys are following us on all appropriate social medias that you guys use, right? We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast. Still figuring out the TikTok username, but that is to come.
Yeah, if you just search Redzone Talk, it does pop. So it's not our username, but you can search Redzone Talk Pod and it should pop. So
yeah, run that up. There's Redzone Talk Pod on YouTube, correct?
Yep, Redzone Talk Pod
and then
YouTube.
Also on Instagram. And then if you're a Twitter guy,
Redzone Talk on Redzone.
Yeah,
on Instagram. Yeah.
Redzone Talk on Instagram. Yeah. If Twitter's your fancy, you could still follow me for all my ridiculous sports takes. You'll probably catch a couple music things and here and there on my Twitter at Owen_Burke on there as well. But that's all the fun stuff, the boring stuff. Now we get to the fun stuff. So why don't you run through kind of our rule changes for trivia and kind of get us set up here?
Yeah. So trivia obviously was eating up half the show previously, around there, a third of the show to half of the show, which was a little bit much. We wanted to do some more talking about like current things, not just be a trivia show. So we're going down to one question a week. It'll be a longer question, the list questions, which is typically what people like the most.
That's what we go for.
Yep. And then I took our records, basically dropped the losses off, and then I gave us points. So Owen's at 70 points. I'm at 60 points. He was 7-5. I was 6-6 on trivia. So if you listen to last week's episode, that's kind of where you know us at. So now he has 70 points. I have 60 points. It is going to be list-based questions from here on out on the single one. Each person you get on the list is worth 10 points now. So if I give him a list of 12 guys, but I need 10 and he gets 7 right, he gets 70 points, doesn't get the question right, which I guess is irrelevant anymore. But
true, it is. It's just name as many as you can now.
Yeah, name as many as you can. Strikes will vary depending on the difficulty of the list is the other thing I'll say there. And then hints will also vary with that too. So we'll have some flexibility. There'll still be some room to do longer lists, harder lists, and things like that. Just a little bit different of a format to hopefully allow us to work in some new segments, spend some more time on some old segments that we used to do a lot of and we haven't been doing too much of. So it'll just give us more room in the show to kind of talk about modern stuff for sure. So with all that being said, I've talked enough here. Let's you ready for your question?
Bring it on, sir.
So Owen and I love interesting one-off stats. Mac Jones is in his third year in the NFL. He has already tied Tom Brady for pick sixes thrown in Foxborough, Massachusetts at home. So
just at home?
Just at home, yep. Wow. So just at home for him. He's already tied with Tom Brady. So
still insane.
Tom Brady had a 16-year career, something like that.
A lot of home games.
A lot of home games there.
Is that including the postseason too?
I'm guessing. Yeah, I think it was all time.
That's a lot more games.
It's a lot more games
played.
So yeah. So he's already tied with Tom Brady as far as pick six thrown in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Obviously an embarrassing loss. So I've got the top 10 pick six thrown in their career in front of me here.
Wow.
There is technically 11 guys. I mean, you're not getting the 11th guy, so I'm going to call it 10.
That 11th guy is Fran Tarkenton. I already know it off the top of my head, but no, you're good.
Yeah. You're not going to know this guy. I have no idea who this guy is.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone else, I would say, in the top 10 is very notable names. So I think it's a very gettable list. I'm still going to give you 3 strikes. I'm going to allow you. The other thing I forgot to mention in rules is basic questions are allowed. How many active guys, how many non-active guys do I have left? What's the minimum threshold to get on? Like those won't count as hints. We'll give particular hints on certain guys here, but the 10 guys that are on this list, very, very gettable. So yeah, I'll kind of give you a head start on this. I'll give you some of the basics here. So we got 10 guys on this list. Essentially, one of them is active. Everyone else is retired. Wow. The bottom guy on this, which is just crazy to say out loud, is 22. 22 puts you at 10. 32 puts you at 1. So
22 pick sixes.
22 pick sixes puts you at 10. 32 puts you at 1. So there's kind of your range for that. Go ahead and fire away. You got 3 strikes, 1 hint today.
All right. So, Dad, there's a meme about somebody always throwing a pick six that I feel like is on this list, but I almost feel like that would be the active guy. But I don't know what the meme is. I mean, guys just going the opposite way. I feel like this active, like if we cut it down to active, I feel like it'd be so easy. And Daniel Jones is up here, guys like that.
The problem with active is like the list opens up to like guys who have thrown like
2 pick sixes.
Yeah, and that puts them on the list at like 100. Like anything with 6 and below, 6 is 145th on this list. So
wow,
and then 7 is 116. So it gets real muddy really quick.
Real dicey real quick.
Yeah, there's some guys that are really high on this list.
Out of all these retired guys, like are we a lot of like post 2000 guys? Half of them.
Post 2000 guys, you have 1, 2, 3. I would count this guy. Most of this guy's career is post 2000.
Yeah, I would count playing career post 2000 is what I'm looking at.
The active guy is 6, and then this guy is 7. I would say, the guy, the one of these guys that I'm not sure if you would say post 2000s for sure, but he definitely had a long career before it. But he is the most obvious answer on this list by far and away.
Okay, well now I'm sitting here thinking why I haven't thought of that guy already.
The fact that this guy doesn't jump in your head immediately is slightly alarming.
For throwing pick sixes?
Yeah.
Is the active guy a starter? Is he a starter in the league?
He is a starter in the league, yeah. Yeah, he started last week. And he's had a pretty long career too. Decent.
Not Aaron Rodgers. Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was. He's well known for not throwing pick sixes, actually.
I would say think of guys who might have been. I don't know if we've ever done the all-time pick leader, but I'm sure that's a list you've probably looked at some point in your life.
Going longevity too. I'm thinking Brett Favre's here when you're talking about picks in general.
Yeah,
I'm gonna count that's an official guess.
That's a guess. Yes. That's number 1.
Okay, is that the guy you're thinking is obvious?
That's the guy I was like, I don't know why, and that's the guy I was like, you count him as post 2000? I think so because he played 10 years post 2000.
Yeah, I would think of him as definitely yeah.
But yeah, definitely number 1 by 3 pick sixes here.
Okay. This may be an out of pocket guess, but I'm thinking longevity and a rough couple years to start his career. Peyton Manning here.
Peyton Manning is here. That's a good guess. Peyton Manning tied for 5th.
So he's just above our active guy.
Yeah.
Man, that active guy's had to have played for a while.
This active guy is tied for 2nd.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, he's played for a good while, drafted 2009. So
drafted in 2009.
Yep.
God, I'm trying to remember what draft class that was.
Trying to think if he would have been drafted in 08 and then his rookie year would have been 09, but yeah, his first year is 09.
Not an official guess. My head immediately jumps to Matt Stafford. Yeah, I think that's around that time frame, but I'm not 100% certain on that, so I'm not going to go there yet. Thinking of other guys here. Is Brady on this list? I feel like it's got to be a guess.
Brady's a good guess. He is not on this list. He is 17th on this list, believe it or not. So he is way down there.
So 22 is the bottom of the list. How many does he have?
17 or 18, excuse me. Yeah, he's 18.
He played more years in the league than he had pick sixes.
Not a big pick guy.
True.
You want to think of guys who
just throw a lot of them.
Throw a lot of them and weren't afraid to maybe throw it a little deeper. Brady's more of a precision check down. You know what I mean? Quick guy.
He played too long for me to not throw him out there.
Not a bad guess at all. He is tied with another active guy, Andy Dalton. So
fair enough. Is John Elway here?
John Elway is
Might be a quick strike two.
Not a bad guess, but that is strike two for you.
Shit.
John Elway is also tied for 17.
Wow. Just really nailing the teens on this list, I'll tell you what. Man, throws a lot of picks. Apparently, I don't know who throws.
You do
a lot
have
of
your
picks in their
hint,
career.
so don't be afraid to use it.
Yeah, I mean, I got to use it now. 2 strikes.
With 2 strikes and 2 right. I would say it'd be smart to use this. So I'm going to talk about some guys who might be slight outliers here. Out of the 04 quarterback class, obviously 3 famous quarterbacks in that draft class. 2 out of 3 of them are here. Is the one hint I'll give you. So there's a little risk in that part of that hint.
It is. I think I know one of them, but if I guess wrong, I'm done for.
Yeah, that's why I wish you used your hint earlier, because I saved that. I was like, oh, that's a good hint because it kind of throws some risk. But now you're on strike 2, so that's a little scary.
Yeah.
You have a guy who is a career journeyman. He is Ryan Fitzpatrick before Ryan Fitzpatrick is the hint I'm going to give for that guy.
Okay.
And then you have one guy who's an outlier here. Definitely, I don't know what I'll call him, an all-time quarterback. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He is very famous. He's still around today. He was actually in the news not that long ago. Played from 1965. Yeah, 1965 to 1977. He only played for one franchise, won a Super Bowl, the only Super Bowl that franchise has ever won, as a matter of fact.
That's a lot of hints on that guy.
Yeah, and he is very high up, but he is very much an outlier, obviously, with 6 or 7 guys post 2000. Everyone on this list besides this guy, and who did you name? You've named Brett Favre and who else?
Favre and Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning, yeah. So there's 2 guys who didn't play at all in the 2000s. This guy is obviously one of them. The other guy didn't play in the 2000s, but was an outlier for pre-2000s kind of passing stats and yards, touchdowns, things like that.
Okay, well, there's a lot of names floating in my head now. I'm so mad that I didn't use that hint earlier. I was trying to see if I could just get there without using it, and the cockiness has gotten to me. I'm thinking the 65 to 77, only Super Bowl in team's history, in the headlines recently, sounds like Joe Namath.
He's correct. Yeah. Joe Namath is the guy who's an outlier. He's 4th on this list with 28. Really, really high up for a guy that long ago.
Namath.
I'm going to give you a freebie here. The active guy was a Georgia Bulldog.
God, that just further reinstates my Matthew Stafford thought train. But I'm so nervous about. I'm not going to toss it straight there yet, because I feel like you wouldn't have told me that if you weren't trying to throw me off.
Or I was doing what I said I was doing, trying to give you a freebie.
Fair, yeah. Is it Matthew Stafford?
Matthew Stafford is our active guy here.
Okay,
tied for 2nd at 29.
I figured that when you said 08-09, that's immediately where my head went. Because not a super long career, but definitely a long one now.
Yeah, you said it, and I was like, man, I'm just going to help him circle back to this, because you nailed that. So
appreciate that. I'm not going to attack the 04 draft class. I want to say Marino. When you say pre-2000s outlier passing stats, Marino does come to my head. I just don't know if I want to burn that guess before I attack the 04 class. I'm going to go with Eli Manning first, because I think if one of those 3 guys is here, he's got to be one of them.
Yeah, Eli Manning is 10th. Surprisingly low for him. He's tied for 10th. He's at 22, obviously. So now you got 5 right, 2 strikes.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to go Big Ben. I know that's risky to go Big Ben, but
Big Ben is unfortunately the guy who did not make the list. Yeah, he is tied with Brady he's tied for 17th with Brady.
Is Marino the other guy?
Marino was the other guy.
Owen. Come on.
So to kind of run through this list here, Brett Favre was 1 at 32. Dan Marino and Matthew Stafford tied at 29 in 2nd place. Joe Namath obviously at 4th. 5th place was a 2-way tie with Manning and Breeze.
Breeze. Yeah, I wouldn't have got Breeze.
I was surprised Breeze was here. Obviously,
Phillip Rivers
is the other 04 guy here at 7. Carson Palmer and Vinny Testaverde tied at 8th.
I should have came back around to the journeyman because I knew that was the second you said that. I was like, we literally just talked about him last week. I know that's Vinny, and I didn't circle back to it.
I thought Ryan Fitzpatrick before Ryan Fitzpatrick kind of was like, hey, here. Oh,
I got it. It clicked perfectly in my head. I just I've been writing down the ideas just so I could trust. That's the one I didn't write down. And
yeah. Carson Palmer and Drew Brees were slightly surprising to me on this list. Like if you'd gotten Carson Palmer, I would have been thoroughly impressed. He was kind of a outlier. Drew Brees, again, I think you play 19 years in the NFL. Yeah. It's going to happen to you. And especially with how kind of ugly the end was there for him.
Fair. Yep.
I think that had to do with it. And then Eli Manning at 10, he was tied with Norm Snead.
Yeah. No. Not Fran Tarkenton, that's for sure.
Not Fran Tarkenton. That's why I said if you got Norm Steed right, I'd probably give you like 100 bonus points or something.
Yeah, I think that would be worthy of 100 bonus points.
I was like, I don't know who this is. Other interesting people just off the list at 12. Kerry Collins is at 12. Matt Ryan is at 12. They both threw 20 interceptions. Jay Cutler stands alone at 16 with 19 pick sixes. And then you have the big group at 17, and then they keep getting bigger from there. So
yeah, that is it's a learning moment right there. I left a lot of points on the board right there. I knew 2 of those answers for sure that I should have gotten 70 points out of there, but
you got 5 points for sure. You got 5. Right?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because I got no. Yeah, 5 because I didn't get Marino. Yeah,
that's what I thought. Okay,
dumbass.
Not bad. Still put up 50 points, but half the list. Hey, look at that. It took up 15 minutes. Kind of like we were kind of hoping it would.
We were shooting for it.
So
how about that? Something going according to plan around here. How about it?
I know. Right? So 120 points. Right now you're doubling me, which seems like really dramatic, but like I could pass you next week. So
yeah, you could take a 50-point lead.
Yeah. Every 10 points, we're going to donate. The difference between us, the loser has to donate $10 to charity. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Maybe we'll start playing single points. Maybe I give that to you. Not 10 points.
Not 10 points there, guy. No, I'm just kidding. We'll figure out something. Loser's going to donate some money to a charity at the end of the year.
Do something.
Just to keep the competitive edge there. Some, doesn't lose its seriousness. So it's serious here. I can't say that word. Seriousness? Is that a word?
There you go. Seriousness. Yeah. That's a word. It's a word in my book. I'm calling it.
It's got to be a word. Well, cool. You ready to jump into the next segment here?
Yeah. I got something else new for the folks here. All my wrestling fans will enjoy this a bit more than most. But to fill in those who don't know, Stone Cold Steve Austin, if you don't know who that is, man, I'm not going to be able to teach you that here in a timely manner. Stone Cold, one of his favorite things back in the day was anytime he go to end an interview, he's telling him what he's going to do, what all this is, going on a rant, and he's like, and that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so. All right, and I'm going to tell you the bottom line about a couple guys and a couple teams that I just feel like, some of them we talk about a lot, some we don't talk about, but I'm going to give you the bottom line on these guys right now. All right. Matt Canada is our first candidate on the bottom line segment this week. All right. Matt Canada obviously been in the headlines a lot recently. This last week was jumping all over because Kenny Pickett audibled the protection and George Pickens' route against Baltimore on Sunday, threw a game-winning touchdown with 1:20 left. Pan up to the box to show the reaction from the offensive coaches, and everybody in the box but Matt Canada was losing their effing mind, which it was funny. Some of the tweets that came out of it were hilarious. Matt Canada, here's the fucking bottom line, buddy. Your team just threw a game-winning touchdown in the 1:20 against the division rival. You fucking celebrate. I don't know why he wasn't celebrating. If he was, truthfully, if he wasn't happy because that wasn't his play call, he should have lost his job on Monday.
It was probably because he was scared of Chris Bosworth in the locker room after. Chris Boswell, yeah, in
the tunnel afterward. Damn sure wasn't because of you. I have a little criticism of Kenny Pickett. I don't think audibling a go route that's confidence, you guys. I'll give you that. Audibling a go route against Marlon Humphrey really isn't the best play call. It worked. You beat him. Yeah, like I said, you had faith in your guys.
How can you say that when it worked? Yeah,
when it worked again, like I said again, but I don't know. But the bottom fucking line is, Matt Canada, your fucking quarterback just threw a game-winning touchdown in the minute 20 against the division rival. You fucking celebrate. I don't care what's going through your head, all right? That's the fucking bottom line for Matt Canada. Mike McCarthy, Dallas Cowboys. Keep this one short and sweet. We talk about Mike McCarthy a lot. And when I say we, I mean me. Dak Prescott's gotten a lot of flack in the media the last week, thrown 3 picks against the 49ers, only struggled 10 points. Here's the bottom line. I would love for anybody to name me any quarterback not named Patrick Mahomes that would have, obviously, there's plenty of guys that may have played a lot better. Maybe. Is there anybody that wins that game? You plug anybody into that offense, it's not Patrick Mahomes, where the Dallas Cowboys win the game against the San Francisco 49ers. Amidst the possibility of them putting up 35 to 42 points.
So you're saying that offense with those weapons and everything?
Yeah, literally just plug in. Obviously, he has the knowledge of the scheme. I'm not dropping him in there blank-headed, but I don't know.
I think there's some guys that could. I think Josh Allen is creative enough. Yeah.
There's some conversations to be had, right? There's definitely not a slam dunk guy. The bottom line is, Mike McCarthy, you're the offensive play caller. You got to put up more than 10 points. You have to put your quarterback in a spot to succeed.
I lied. Josh Allen, after a really disappointing loss, would win that game.
Fair, yeah. There's probably a couple other ones we could come up with. Josh Allen after a loss. But the bottom line, Mike McCarthy, is, I mean, when you sit down and you watch that game and you're looking at the plays that he throws picks on, there is not really much for him to throw to, right? And the 49ers have a pretty good read on what Dallas is going to do. Fred Warner has called them predictable. That's exactly what he said on his podcast when he's talking about that Dallas game afterwards. That's not a Dak Prescott issue that the Cowboys offense is predictable. That's a Mike McCarthy issue. So, bottom line, Mike McCarthy, figure out a way to put up more than 10 points, put your quarterback in a better spot, or you might not have a job come next offseason. Next guy on the list, and probably the one that's going to hurt me the most, but I don't know if you're just reading that name and that's what that looks for, or if it's something else.
No, I'm reading something else. Sorry.
John Harbaugh, my guy, Baltimore's head coach. Obviously, a very disappointing loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers this last week, 17-10. Here's the bottom line for John Harbaugh, all right? New offensive coordinator this year, new defensive coordinator last year that's still in the house. We have 2 new coordinators within the last 2 years. We are still losing games that we should not lose. We cannot put teams away that are obviously worse than us talent-wise. He's not on the hot seat. It's not going to be the same bottom line. You're going to be out of a job in the offseason. But the bottom line is there's one guy left that can be – the fingers can still be pointed at for us not being able to close out games, all right? And it's the guy at the helm of all of it that's been there since 2008. The bottom line is you have to close games. We have had a 10-point lead in, I think, like, I don't remember the exact stat, but like almost 20 of our last, I think it was like 19 of our last like 25, 30 losses, we've had a 10-point lead in at some point in the game. The bottom line is you have to close games, and you have to win division games in the AFC North if you want to secure the division title at the end of the year. It's not a division that you can go 2-6 in and still claim a division title based off record alone. Every team in there is going to be within 2 or 3 games. That division record matters more in the AFC North than anywhere else. Bottom line is close the game, or Baltimore might turn and try to find a guy that can. But that's it. That's the bottom lines for you.
Do you really realistically you think there's a way that they fire John Harbaugh at the end of the season?
Not at the end of the season, no.
Okay. I just was curious.
The only there's a very minute chance of it, right? A large collapse, this, that, or the other. And if Mike McDonald is getting a lot of head coaching offers and they're really worried about losing him and the season ends terribly, maybe. But it's a very slim chance. And a lot of that also banks on how hot of a prospect Mike McDonald is. Because a lot of Baltimore fans think he's gone in this offseason, that he's going to be a head coach next year, yeah. Which I think he's produced the results to, but I haven't heard any traction otherwise.
I was like, I haven't heard, as somebody who's into that kind of stuff and is been raving about Ben Johnson for a long time.
Yeah.
And I also rave about people who don't deserve to be raved about. To be very clear, I end up falling in love with a lot of stupid people too.
That's part of loving the game.
But I have not heard much around him. Did he have any head coaching interviews this last season?
No, it was his first year as a DC in the NFL last year.
Yeah.
So
So
I think teams were.
typically you have to interview one cycle before you, like there's some guys who get hired their first cycle, but it's guys who have like made magic. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
not very often that you get, most of the time you get interviewed one cycle and then you get hired the next, as
And
long as you contain that success.
yeah, up until last week, like I would say that like our defense has played at a level that would warrant the interviews for sure. Because again, last year, super banged up, couldn't guard anybody. This year, super banged up, but we were finding a way. The defense was finding a way this year. But obviously the drops, I don't want to get into the whole Lamar thing. We'll be here for another half an hour if I get into the criticism of Lamar Jackson and national media this week. But if we have time, we might circle back to it. But that's the bottom line because Owen Burke said so.
I'm just saying, maybe if you didn't play a running back at quarterback, you guys would win some more games.
So much.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
you know,
I hate Stephen A. Smith this week. He was definitely on my shit list for what he was talking about on Monday, but it is what it is.
That's a rather interesting. So there's the bottom line for you. For those of you at home, I was told there was going to be an accent or an impersonation there.
Yeah.
And then that didn't happen. So I'm just disappointed slightly.
I fell apart on it a bit, and if the fan, if you guys want the bottom line with the whole Stone Cold accent, I'll work on it and everything. I wasn't as prepared as I thought it was going to be for the segment.
I mean, doesn't have to be Stone Cold. Like I'll take a Jesse Ventura. I'll take Macho Man Randy Savage. We can rotate it if that would make you feel better.
We might, see, there it is, folks. If you want different accents for the bottom line, you want it to keep going. You're gonna have to get active on the social medias. You got to hit me up. You got to do something. We'll keep it rolling.
We want people. We don't want we're not gonna read it in like an offensive accent or something.
Read it in Spanish. No, I don't have time to learn Spanish to read the bottom line in Spanish.
I almost called somebody out. I'm so glad I bit my tongue and didn't say that out loud. I'll tell you what I was thinking afterwards. But,
okay.
But yeah, no,
that's funny.
Okay. I wanted to talk headlines this week. We've got some interesting ones for sure. I think some cool conversations that are going to be had here. The most interesting one to me, can Brock Purdy win an MVP? Not like in the sense of like, is he capable of winning an MVP, but more in the sense of, is there any way he gets enough credit to actually win an MVP? There's been a lot of chatter around this, right? On both sides, right? And I'll tell you some interesting arguments. Nick Wright, he put it very plainly. He's like, I have a rule: you can't win MVP if you're not in the top 3 MVPs on your own team, which was just kind of funny, but it was very, very true to a certain degree. And then some other people, I can't remember who I heard make this argument, so I apologize, but I'm sure it was somebody that like only very few people have heard of. It was a very niche argument, but this one really bothered me. It really did. He read off the stat and it was kind of bashing Kyle Shanahan at the same time, which you and I hate. We've stood up for Kyle so many times. But he read off a stat that Kyle Shanahan's winning percentage as a head coach with Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy is like 75%. Mm-hmm. Without those two, it's 24%. And the argument he was trying to make, is it the system or is like the talent? I was like, okay, let's like think about this realistically. Jimmy Garoppolo is a bottom half starter in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And I would almost sit here and argue like you could put Brock Purdy in a mid-tier starter, but you're not putting Brock Purdy in the Jalen Hurts. Yeah, not in a high tier either. So are we trying to say when Kyle Shanahan has a competent starter, he wins 75% of his game? Is that like all the argument that you were trying to make there?
Yeah,
like, he was trying to make it sound like, when Jimmy has Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy, elite guys, he wins 75%. I'm like, wait.
Which further, that backs the MVP conversation for Brock Purdy at that point. Firstly,
I think that was the point. Like he was making a terrible argument because it helped his point. But I was like, I think the blind side there is like these guys aren't elite. Like I wouldn't argue he's done anything to call himself like what does Brock Purdy do that makes him an elite quarterback?
He doesn't make mistakes. I mean, that's not an elite quality. That doesn't carry you over that line, right? It's a very, very good quality, and it's a quality you can make a career out of. The thing that I hear with that stat, the first thing that comes to my head is Kyle Shanahan, when he has his planned starting quarterback, wins 75% of his games. I'm like, well, that's most guys in the NFL. Hey, by the way, you're playing with your backup this week. How many games are you going to win? Yeah. Right? Like that is a very dumb stat.
It was such a bad argument. I was like, what is this stat? It's like, oh, when Kyle Shanahan has a top 32 quarterback, he wins 75% of his games. When he has a guy who's a bottom 60 quarterback, 60s quarterback, he can't win. It's like,
literally
is the system that good because he couldn't win with CJ Beathard? It's like, no, it's like,
that stat just sounds like he wins 75% of his games when his starters play. That's what I hear when I hear.
Who was the backup that they traded? Was it last year that they traded one of their guys? Because they had CJ Beathard and they had one other guy. I can't remember.
Mullins was the other guy that was there a lot.
Yeah. And
I don't know if he got traded, but he landed in Minnesota.
Yeah, like his system is so good it gets third string guys like gigs other places. Like it's not anything like. That argument made me so mad.
There's a 3-week period where like that was Nick at Night. Slick Nick Mullins was like a thing because of how good Kyle Shanahan's offense is. Like, and then they were like, okay, never mind. Then we made a mistake.
Yeah, I don't. It drives me nuts. Like it was such a bad. Like that is the worst way to make an argument. Is like, oh yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo's elite. Yeah, look at what he's doing in Las Vegas right now. Oh yeah, real elite talent. And it, like, if you want to get into that argument too, like. He has Devontae Adams, who is a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, and he has Josh Jacobs, who is, I mean, a top 5 running back in the NFL.
He's the best running back in the NFL last year.
Last year, he led the league in rushing.
And well, you could go further than that. They spent a second-round pick on Michael Mayer, second or third, right, on a tight end of Michael Mayer.
They took him in the second,
Austin Hooper, who was once upon a time a top 5 tight end and has fallen off a cliff. Still a talented guys there. Jacoby Myers is one of the best twos. One of the better 2 or 3s. Like, I mean, he gets his love. And Hunter Renfrow is one of the better route runners in the league. Also, they just don't throw Hunter Renfrow the ball anymore. I think that's an issue that I have with Josh.
They don't throw the ball to Devontae Adams. Like, Michael Myers looked like the best receiver out there on Monday night. And I was like, that was such a terrible game to watch. But neither one of them, like, Green Bay was like, do we have wide receivers? Can we throw to those guys? That's legal?
Yeah. Vegas's top 3 receivers are just the receivers alone. Are probably a top 10 trio in the game. I don't think it's crazy to say. And that's I think they have 3 talented guys there and they can't figure it out. But we're going off the point. Back to Purdy and the MVP conversation. Like I think it's damn well possible because it's not about, to me, it's never about what's around you. Because I don't think you should punish Brock Purdy because he got drafted into Kyle Shanahan's offense with all these Pro Bowlers around him. Like that's not fair. Now, do I think it comes into effect? Yes. If he has comparable stats at the end of the year to a guy who doesn't have all this, right? Him and Patrick Mahomes' numbers are level with each other. Who's the MVP going to go to? It's going to go to Patty because at the end of the day, he's more talented and he's doing more with less, right? But if no one else has comparable numbers or numbers that succeed him by a wide margin, it would have to be Christian McCaffrey at that point, right? It's going to have to be some other statistical outlier at a position that would never win MVP. It's going to be a non-quarterback that would win at that point.
I think the argument has been made. It has always been a quarterback on one of the top 4 teams in the league. Mm-hmm. Every year that somebody's won it, like Mahomes has been the 1. I think the 2, maybe 1 year that he won it.
Rodgers
Lamar was the 1. Lamar. So it seems to go, and they're going to be up there. They're going to be the 1 or the 2 in the NFC. I don't think there's any question about that at this point, barring any crazy injuries or anything like that. Yeah. But if there was an injury to him, he wouldn't be in the MVP race. So that was a stupid point. But so I think it's an interesting argument that like there's a chance he finishes top 5 in voting, but I don't know if it's deserved at all.
Can he be an MVP? Yes. But again, like, anybody puts up comparable numbers, he will get discredited right out of the argument. But if his numbers are just too good to deny and nobody's close and there is no statistical outlier of Christian McCaffrey or a 2,000-yard season from a receiver anywhere, like I think it's hard not to look at a guy because, like, again, we get to the end of the year. Talent be damned. He throws for over 5,000 yards, throws 40 touchdowns and 10 picks, so 12 picks, whatever, right? Decent completion percentage, QBR, everything's there. And Patty throws for 4,500 yards and 38 touchdowns, maybe 16 picks, a couple more. Same with Josh Allen. Picks are up, touchdowns maybe up a bit, yards are down. How do you look at a guy that performed that well and just toss him to the side if no one else is a glaring candidate?
Yeah.
So it comes down to the field at the end of the day, I think.
It is. I think it's an interesting conversation, at least, to be like, are we capable of even giving this guy the opportunity to win? And I'm not sure anyone would, because I agree with you. If anyone's close, he would have to be by far and away the one.
He's going to have to statistically blow everybody out of the water to get there.
Yeah.
But with all the guys around him, it's possible.
It is. It's not insane.
The question is, can he? Yes, he can.
We just talked about Jimmy Garoppolo having like a top 3 duo. The one duo is San Francisco, like without question.
Yeah.
And the issue is you could take several guys and put it in the top 3, but I think their top 3 is McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and Debo. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to extend it out to 4, yeah, you can put Kittle in there, and honestly, you could put Kittle at 3.
Yeah. Certain weeks, depending on matchup, he is 2 or 3.
That's the issue, is like anyone could go off at any point. Just depends on who has the best matchup that week. So
exactly.
I don't know. I think it was an interesting conversation for sure. Okay, next thing I wanted to kind of run through. Jonathan Taylor signs a new deal, returns back to the Colts. I'm gonna touch on one thing real quick here. If you were one of the people that are like, oh, Zach Moss is still gonna get a majority of the carry, that's just like, it's his first week back. Like, relax, okay? Like, if you start him in fantasy, I started him in fantasy because I didn't have a choice, but like, just simmer down a little bit here of like, oh, you had 75% of the snaps or whatever. Like I was like, relax, give him, by like in 2 or 3 weeks, he's
coming back. Like, as much as the contract was part of it, he's coming back from an injury. Right?
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to just be like, here's 30 carries right back. Like,
yeah. It's like, relax. He's going to be the main guy. So simmer on down. Okay. Yeah. But he signs a 3-year, $42 million deal, which isn't crazy. It's really, his cap number isn't insane. It's going to be $5 million this year, $10 million next year, $15 million the year after, and then 15 in 2026. So, not a bad gig for him at all. So. And if there was a team that had the ability to do it, it was the Colts, right? You're going to have Anthony Richardson on his rookie contract for the next 5 years. This, if anything, brings some stability to the weapons that he has, right? The only issue with Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones was Saquon Barkley was a year ahead of Daniel Jones. Mm-hmm. Like, that was the big downside, is you're going to have to pay them both at the same time. If you have to pay a running back, pay him when your quarterback's still on his rookie deal. And
that contract will expire before they even get to the 5th-year option.
For the 5th-year option for Anthony Richardson. So, yes, it will. I was like, well, but yes, it will.
It would be the year of, if nothing else.
A year of, yeah. But so I think it's a really smart idea. He's a young running back. He's not like, for a guy who's coming off his rookie deal. I mean, he's 24 years old because he was a later round pick. He was a second rounder, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the second round pick. Yes. I think he was the second running back taken because Clyde was taking a pick 32. And
I was about to say, wasn't Clyde the first running back taken?
Yeah, he was like the top 5 pick of the second round. And then a couple picks later was DeAndre Swift. Good job, Brett Veach.
Could you imagine if Jonathan Taylor was on?
Or DeAndre Swift? I can't imagine either of them in Kansas City. I would.
Yeah. Talk about it. Yeah. I don't even want to talk about DeAndre Swift. Talk about a guy who everyone was like, oh, this guy's terrible. And then he like goes to a team with a decent offensive line and is just like destroying. And you're like,
yeah, I don't want to get into the Lions running back situation because I could talk about that for a while.
We talked.
It's a bit more than what we talked about beforehand, but yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts and reactions to kind of the deal and everything?
I like the deal. I don't think it's a crazy amount of money for a top running back in this game. The only thing that I could draw a real stink to, and I absolutely hate this part of it, but again, in the long run of getting this guy back on contract and expires before Anthony Richardson's 5th-year option, and maybe you have to pay him again, maybe he's done in the league at that point, right? Whatever the case is. The only thing that I absolutely hate is the optics, and again, at the end of the day, optics don't fucking matter when you're trying to bring Jonathan Taylor back on a long-term extension. The optics of watching Zach Moss kind of tear it up I mean, every game he had over 70 yards. He had He had one game over 160. This is Zach Moss. Let's just run through this. He had 3 touchdowns in the 4 games he played. 88 yards, 122 yards, 70 yards, 165 yards. Over 4 yards a carry in every single one, and over 5 yards a carry in 2 games. The optics of like watching Zach Moss tear it up and then being like, you know what? Actually, yeah, let's fork over all the money for JT now. I was just like, what the fuck? This guy just proved that you kind of don't need Jonathan Taylor. And again, in the long run, Zach Moss comes back to earth. You realize that you would have made a mistake by letting JT go, so this doesn't matter. But again, the timing of like, hey, Zach Moss just ran for 165 yards. I think it's time we pay Jonathan Taylor. Like, I was just like, what the fuck are we doing? But other than that, and again, at the end of the day, no one's going to remember that at the end of the season next year and the year after. But yeah.
The real question is it sustainable for Zach Moss to have this continued success? That's the real thing, and that's why
no one will ever remember this part of it. But like again, in the moment, you're just like, what the fuck? This guy for 4 games just proved that you didn't need JT, and now you're paying him.
It's an interesting it's an interesting part of the conversation, but yeah, I just don't think I don't know how sustainable it is for Zach Moss, because Zach Moss was one of those guys every year in Buffalo. Oh, look out for him. He's gonna be it. And it's crazy to me that ultimately that Nyheim Hines, who was one of those guys in Indianapolis forever, that everyone was like, this guy's explosive.
Just wait for it.
Great. Just wait for it. He ends up in Buffalo, and then the guy in Buffalo ends back up in Indianapolis. I was like, why didn't you guys just trade last year?
And if you asked me who was going to pop on their new teams, I would have told you Nyheim Hines.
Yeah,
and here we are. Zach Moss ran for 165 yards last week, and Nyheim Hines, I think, is the 3rd running back on their depth chart in Buffalo. So.
I mean, if anything, you can feel pretty happy as a Colts fan that like, okay, this guy is going to be able to come in, because really what Zach Moss does better is the explosive plays, the big breaks. You know what I mean? So
yeah, he averaged 7 yards a carry in that game. He rushed for 165. So
the way I'm viewing this is kind of like the old Cowboys way of like, okay, listen, we have Jonathan Taylor. He's going to be, on, 2 through 3. He's going to be a 3rd down running back. He's going to ground and pound it when we want 4 or 5 yards, and then every now and again, we're going to bring out Zach Moss just kind of as a wild card factor. You know what I mean? JT needs a break. Because, I mean, again, like Tony Pollard, how long did we have to hear? Oh, when Tony Pollard gets a chance to be the full-time back, like he's going to be special. I mean, and from a fantasy perspective, I think he's played well, but I don't think anyone's talking about Tony Pollard as an elite running back in the NFL. So, and the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about with this, the thing that's interesting to me in particular is, one, he's the first running back to hold out and then sign a deal with his team and
get paid by that team.
Yeah, sign like I know Saquon.
Well, actually, according to your rule book, Lamar Jackson also did that. But
well, yeah, Lamar Jackson's got a pretty big fat contract for a running back, if you ask me. For those of you who don't know, that's a joke, by the way. But yeah. I do think it's hilarious when people make that argument.
Yeah, it's fun.
But yeah, he holds out, signs a contract with his team, and I don't think it's unreasonable. Is the biggest thing I'll say is. The money that he signed for, I think teams with rookie quarterbacks could make deals like this for elite running backs. So
yeah, and I honestly I would be okay with paying him a bit more on the 3-year scale. Like you don't change the years. Like I could up that money a bit and probably still feel comfortable. Now there's obviously no need to, right? You got to be signed for this price. Don't push it up for no reason. But I don't think the money
craziest part in 2025. So after this season, next year, and the year after that, they have an out for $2.5 million. That's all his dead cap money would be. So basically, the last year of his deal is non-guaranteed.
Yeah, so, and that's how I think if teams are really smart about it, like short-term deals for running backs, front load the hell out of them, right? Get your money's worth out of them while they're good, and then at the end of that contract, if they're really not living up to it, $2.5 million out. And, you're not sitting there tying up all your cap space.
Yeah.
I think that is that should be running back contract 101 for any NFL team out there. Keep the deal short, front load the money, just in case things go south, it's easier to move off of. Because if you backload that and it goes south and he's got a $40 million of it sitting on that last year, you're just stuck,
Yeah, so I think it was a smart deal on both sides. I think Jonathan Taylor I don't know where that puts him in the running back market, but probably lower than he wanted to be. But
yeah, lower than what he's holding out for.
Yeah. I want to look it up real quick. Who are the highest paid running backs?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Doesn't even break him into the top 5.
Yeah, like, and we damn sure know that he's talented enough, I think, to be in that top 5 area. Who are the top 5 if he's not top 5?
You want cap hit or base salary?
Go base salary. What, Chubb's up there?
Chubb is 1 at 10.8.
I knew that.
Derrick Henry is 10.5. Tony Pollard is 3 at 10 million. Saquon is 4 at 8 million. Obviously, that's under the franchise tag. Mm-hmm. Josh Jacobs, same deal where he's under the franchise tag for 7.5 million. So,
yeah, that's sad that 2 of the top 5 are franchise tags. That's sad.
Bijan Robinson is the highest total cash running back right now, at 13.7 million because he was drafted so high. And makes his contract that much paid. I mean, Chris McCaffrey's behind him at second, and then Jonathan Taylor is right behind Christian McCaffrey at like 11.9 total cash. So, not that far off, honestly. So,
yeah.
I think it's a smart deal for both teams. It lets keeps the Colts flexibility, all of that stuff. So, let's talk about your division for a little bit. I think this is an interesting one. We're going to talk. I want to talk about the AFC North. I want to talk about the NFC South. These were the 2 divisions you and I talked about as the hardest to predict for 2 completely different reasons.
Yeah.
And they have held true to that for the most part. God, I cannot get this hair to sit right with these headphones on.
There you go. Don't touch them again.
Driving me insane, but I'm a fiddler, so I'm going to fiddle with those headphones again. Yeah, AFC North is completely wide open. It's a rather interesting time to be a fan. I'm trying to get the standings pulled up here.
Baltimore should have taken a decisive lead last week, and
they didn't. That was their chance to kind of pull away. Pittsburgh actually is your division leader at the moment. I think it's based off of a division record. They're 2-0 inside of the division, but you have 2 teams at 3-2 at the top. You have 2 teams at 2-3. Oh, the Cleveland Browns are 2-2. At the bottom there with their bye week being last week. So, and a really interesting division. Honestly, out of all those teams, I think Pittsburgh's probably been the 3rd best team so far this year, I would say.
You can make the argument they've been the worst for on-field product and what they brought to the field. They're probably the worst team in our division. Like outside of you got to think of like Deshaun Watson didn't play against Baltimore. Now they've had their bye week as well. So that one is a little trickier. Obviously, the Bengals have been garbage compared to their expectations. That's who I was
more thinking at 4th, but
yeah, that's a fair argument. But Pittsburgh should not. The fact that Pittsburgh's leading our division right now kind of makes me want to throw up, to be fully honest. And it makes me even more sick again when you just talk about like they have not been good. Like you were sit down and be like, how good have the Pittsburgh Steelers been? There's not a lot of bright spots. We've been talking more about how they suck, how Matt Canada sucks. Najee Harris runs like he has jeans on. George Pickens can't catch a ball without committing offensive pass interference. Kenny Pickett has small hands. Whatever the case is, they just don't bring a lot of good football to the field right now, and they're number 1 in the division because Baltimore just loves to play down to the competition right now. That's been our issue the last couple of years with the injuries.
And it's also a really interesting conversation around you have what I would argue 3 elite / borderline elite quarterbacks, right? Deshaun Watson's tough to say he was elite. It's hard to say if he still is, just because he hasn't played in so long, and he didn't play well at the end of last year. He hasn't been amazing so far this year.
He's played okay, not good or elite.
Yeah, okay at best, right? So you sit here and you look at a division and you say, wow, there's like some strong quarterbacks, but none of the great ones pull away in this division.
Nope.
And do you think that speaks to maybe we overvalue quarterbacks in the AFC North, or do you think it's more of the division is actually that tough? It's not is it a Bills Dolphin thing where you got 2 Titans kind of going at it, or is it more of these quarterbacks are more mid than we probably realize?
I think the QBs are up there. I have to sneeze, but I don't know if it's in there. Nope, there it goes. It's gone. There is just this innate quality, and we've talked about that ever since we started the betting part of the show a while ago. Obviously, there's never if there's a 7 line, if there is honestly anything over 5 line in a division AFC North game, don't touch it because these teams will not separate from each other. Like Baltimore did against Cleveland again. Dorian Thomas Robinson was starting quarterback that game. That was a 24-point win for Baltimore. But other than that, even with how terrible Cincinnati is, that was a 3-point game for Baltimore, right? That is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about this Ravens team is by far and away the most talented, by far and away the most complete. In my extremely biased opinion, they have the best quarterback in the division. Non-biased, completely factual, they've had the best quarterback in this division this year. Through 5 games, they've had the best quarterback in the division. And here we are. They have a loss against Pittsburgh. And then
did you say unbiasedly they have the best quarterback in the division, or did you say with bias?
Bias, they have the best quarterback in the division. Unbiased, through 5 weeks, they have the best quarterback in the division.
Okay.
This year, unbiased, Lamar Jackson's been the best quarterback in the division. I don't think there's an argument there.
No, I don't think it is either. But I thought you were saying, man, you'd take Lamar over Joe Burrow. That's interesting.
Biased, yes, I will. I will. That's my guy. I'm going to ride with my quarterback till the wheels fall off.
As a Patriots fan, I'd take either of them. Shit, I'd take Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, bring me Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, give me Kenny Pickett. I don't care.
Oh, man.
I'd take Gardner Minshew right now. So
trade for him, man. I've been saying. I'm going to laugh if he starts to tear it up in Indy. I'm not gonna, I will celebrate that a bit. That's exactly what I'm – thank you for reminding me who our second loss of the year was. Baltimore has a loss against Gardner Minshew of the Colts and Kenny Pickett of the Steelers, right?
Yeah.
But and a 3-point win over Joe Burrow, who's looked like a shell of himself while fighting through this injury at the beginning part of the year. Like –
it's tough for these teams to win like Super Bowls, in my opinion, because of how tough this division is.
It's such a dogfight to get out.
Yeah, there's so many dogfights that, I mean, the most successful team in the postseason that we've seen kind of in this modern era of the AFC North is the Bengals.
And that's making
it to AFC championship games. And they don't do it as a top seed. They really do it as wild cards or, they win 2 games that nobody kind of thought they would win. So, it is rather interesting to kind of see this phenomenon going on of,
it's a close game division. I mean, that's what it is. Barring the injury to your starting quarterback, like these games are going to be separated by a touchdown, if that.
Well, I want to read one more stat and then we can kind of move on from this here. I found this super interesting. Do you know who has the worst point differential in the division?
Is it Cincy?
So it's tied. So it's kind of a trick question. Cincy is one of the teams. Pittsburgh is the other team.
Yeah.
So your division, last place in your division and first place in your division have the same differential points at negative 31 points. That shows you how wild this division actually is.
Yeah, that says we're 5 weeks into the season, right? Pittsburgh's sitting at the top of our division at what, 3-2 overall, or
3-2, and then their conference, they are division, they're 2-0.
3-2, worst point differential, tied for the worst point differential. There has been 2 weeks. They're 2 losses. They did not score a touchdown. They're actually 3-0 and they scored a touchdown. How about that? There's your Steelers stat of the week. They are 3-0 when they score a touchdown, and they're 0-2 when they don't score a touchdown. How about it? Seems like
I love to imagine in the coach's office. All right, guys. Here's what we're thinking. Defense, we're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
What do we think the key factors are for winning the game? Ooh, I got one, Coach.
I got one.
If we score 1 touchdown, we're 3-0.
We're 3-0.
Matt Canada's like, shit, man. You want 1 touchdown out of the offense?
That's a lot, man. God.
You sure?
I've been leaning on Chris. The real thing is that Matt Canada just has Chris Boswell on his fantasy team, and that's what he's shooting for. He's like, all we got to do is get inside the 40. And then I'm calling 3 inside handoffs to Najee Harris.
Is he still the kicker?
Yeah, Chris Boswell's still their kicker there, yeah.
Okay. I didn't know. Yeah. I just know that clip is obviously pretty viral, but I didn't know if he was still.
That was from this year. Yeah, that was from this year.
No.
I think it was.
I think it was from last year. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure I remember that being viral last year.
Okay,
but
maybe it was last year, but still, it's a recent clip, and
yeah,
I'm going to be honest. Like, if Matt Canada is the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers next year, and people are like, "Oh, the Rooney family doesn't fire people 5 weeks into the season." He's been bad for 3 years.
yeah.
They haven't had a 400-yard offensive game. They haven't scored a touchdown in 2 of the 5 weeks. I don't know.
The real question is Matt Canada better or worse than Matt Patricia as an offensive coordinator? Like, I genuinely, I think Pittsburgh looks at that offense last year and go, man, I think I'd rather have that than this.
I know, like, this is the thing. Like, the fact that is a question that you don't laugh at is the reason he should be fired. The fact that you'd be like, hey, you know that guy that coached defensive special teams for like 8 years and was a horrible head coach elsewhere? Yeah. Is he better than our offensive coordinator? The fact that you didn't laugh at my question means that guy should be fired immediately. But
it's insanity.
Yeah. I don't know. Pittsburgh is, I can't believe that they're number one in our division. That hurts my feelings.
It is. It's insanity. So let's jump into the next one I had here. Let's talk a little bit about the NFC South. The champions of mid is kind of what I think of this division here.
That's a great way of putting it.
Nobody is truly elite, but nobody is. I mean, besides Carolina. Carolina is hot ass. Like, they are on 5. Like, they are terrible.
I didn't know that they were 0-5, to be honest, until we started talking about it this week. I was like, squeak one in there somewhere?
Yeah, I know. It's been bad. Bryce Young has not looked very good. Frank Wright might be on the hot seat. And God, we can talk about
that. I hate that headline, but
I also hate the headline that's floating around now that Frank Wright wanted CJ Stroud over Bryce Young. And we had talked about that too, because it's like he didn't really ever had a short quarterback. Yeah. But it's like, okay, that's such an easy headline to have leak out now, because it's like, well, yeah, every team's going to be like, well, if we had the chance to draft CJ Stroud, we would have, the Colts are like, we would have taken CJ Stroud if he'd fallen to us. It's like, well, yeah, obviously, like, I didn't like CJ Stroud coming out that much, but man, that guy is balling out. So
yeah, 100%.
I'll admit that I was very wrong on CJ Stroud, but CJ Stroud looks like a legit starter. He is top 5 in passing yards so far this year. Like, that is nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of break down this division. New Orleans beats up on a terrible New England team. Atlanta just like randomly squeaks by wins. Tampa Bay's 3-1 with their only loss coming to Philadelphia. They had their bye last week.
It wasn't a blowout.
And it wasn't a blowout.
5-6 point loss.
Yeah, it was an interesting game to say the least. So
they had their bye week last week too.
Yeah,
Are they 2-2.
They're 3-1. They're 3-1. Yeah. So they only have four games in. So
5 byes suck.
It's a really interesting division. I kind of had Carolina pulling out. I said Tampa Bay would be interesting. I don't think New Orleans is very real personally.
They are living and dying by their defense, which is exactly like I had them at 9-8 winning that division, and it's happening. I don't know if they'll finish it or how the rest of the season is going to play out. The way it's happening is exactly how I thought it was, and they were going to coast based off of how good their defense was.
Yeah.
And that's what they've done so far. I mean, that is, they play Houston this week. I'll talk about that game later. It's in my bets of the week. Like, they are living and dying by their defense right now, and it's working. So.
Yeah, and Atlanta either like they play really, and this is a weird thing. A lot of Atlanta teams play like this. At home, they play really well, but on the road, they just look abysmal. Mm-hmm. I don't think, and it's interesting too because you have tiers here, right? Like, Carolina Panthers, you're going to cut some slack. Bryce Young, rookie year, you're not going to like move on from him this year. Saints, obviously, Derek Carr is kind of, your starting quarterback for at least the next 2 or 3 years. The Atlanta Falcons could win this division and replace Desmond Ridder this offseason. Yeah. Like, Desmond Ridder has not looked good.
Talk about a team that should trade for Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, I thought he would just look okay, and that's all he would need to do because there's so many weapons. He has looked bad. Yeah. And who would have thought this day was coming? But Baker Mayfield looks like a legit like he is playing well enough where I wouldn't say, like, if I was Tampa Bay, if the season ended right now and I'm Tampa Bay, even if I have a top 10 pick, I'm not sure I take a quarterback.
Yeah, like I would have to have number 1, 2, 3, right? Like it's got to be one of those guys.
If I'm not getting the top 2 guys, like if I'm down to Sanders, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, I'm not sure I'm replacing them with Baker.
Yeah.
I'm really not. And they're not. They're going to either be a mid pick or a late pick because of how well they're playing. So
I'll just go on record now, and obviously we're going to talk about it more in draft season. I think Bo Nix kind of stinks, and I don't think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback at all. I don't think he's worth a top 3 round pick, to be honest with you, because I don't think he's going to succeed in the next level. That's just, we can get into that later. I don't want to go off on a skew on a fucking Bo Nix tangent at the hour mark because we'll get lost. But
I think the hype with him being a first is incorrect, but I don't think he ultimately lands in the first round. Yeah. I think there is 3 guys that are going to be first round picks for sure, but and I think
we got a long way to draft season.
Yeah. I think
we're already itching.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't wait. I just want to know who the Patriots are going to draft. I'm already excited.
Some corner out of a D2 school.
And if you're my friend and you send me one of those stupid memes about the Patriots having the first overall pick, but Belichick takes a long snapper from Navy, stop. I've seen
be that guy.
You're already I've just assumed someone's already sent it to me or I've already seen it because like I've had multiple people send it to me and I'm like, just don't.
Proud to say that I'm not the friend that has sent that to you. So
I got whatever.
I did chuckle at it when I saw it, but I was like, he'll see it.
He'll see this. This is coming around to this.
He'll see it.
Yeah, I know. Everyone's like, oh, and this is so true. I'm like, he's not even going to be the head coach next year. So what are we talking about?
Yeah. The more I'm reading and hearing about it, the more I do believe that like this is probably the last ride.
To me, it's more interesting to see if he would take another head coaching job. I think that's a more interesting conversation at this point than whether he'll be the Patriots head coach next year.
Yeah.
And we talked about it being an inside guy. Everything I'm hearing from Boston people is it's Gerard Mayo.
Wow.
Like he's like almost locked to be the next Patriots guy, which I think is a shame because if Flores is out there, I'd love like a guy like Flores to bring him back.
100%.
But Mayo interviewed for head coaching jobs last year, and there was like apparently they upped his money to try to get him to stay, and typical Patriots move. But
they're playing for him to be the next guy. That's what that says. Hey, come back. We might have something for you in a year or two.
I think like the Mayo, and then you bring McDaniel's back to New England for a 3rd time. Jeez, that's just wild to say because he's going to get fired.
Billy B go at that point?
Yeah, I mean, you could keep Billy B too, I guess. It just, I mean,
2 offensive coordinators.
How do you keep Billy B the way that this offense is playing? That's the hard part is like, Bill has done a bad job. Is like, you have to fire Bill because he's the GM, and you also have to fire Bill O'Brien because his offense, like McDaniels had a very similar offense and it didn't look abysmal.
At the end of the day, your scheme is great. You have the best scheme in the world, right? Every offensive coordinator is going to believe that. You have to make it work with the talent you have. Same thing with Frank Reich in Carolina. Cool. You wanted a big, strong quarterback. Bottom line, you don't have one. Figure out how to make Bryce Young work, right? Yeah, that's what we're paying you to do. So whether you think it's a Bill O'Brien problem, Mac Jones problem, whatever, you got to figure it out at the end of the day. That's what you're paid to do.
But yeah, I honestly, the point is keep your eye on this division. This is going to be one of those divisions where you're like, oh, who cares about this game? Every game in this division has playoff implications. Besides outside of Carolina, it is going to be really interesting.
There's another victory lap for me right there. Baker Mayfield's the best quarterback in the NFC South right now. And
he is. Baker Mayfield is probably a top 5 quarterback in the NFC.
Yeah, that's insanity, but
it's not crazy to say.
No, like it's crazy to say because you're just like, just the sentence of it. You're just like, what the fuck is he talking about? But when you sit down and look at it, you're like, it's so hard to argue it, you know?
Jalen Hurts 1.
Yep.
Probably Brock Purdy 2. Dak Prescott 3. Jared Goff 4. I'd probably take Goff over Dak right now.
Yeah, I would. I'd say Kirk Cousins is probably above.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins. So maybe he's not top 5. That might have been. I'm glad we ran through that. I thought I was going to be like, oh yeah, easy. But yeah, I'd probably take
top 10, which isn't saying much in 16 teams, but still top 8. Is he top half?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean,
scrapes in there.
I would take still Stafford probably at 6.
You take Geno Smith over him?
That's where I think that's where it gets interesting.
I don't think I'd take Geno over him so far this year.
Yeah, Geno's interesting. There's another name. Derek
Josh
Carr
Dobbs
becomes interesting. Yeah, not Josh Dobbs. Kyler. I mean, I don't know if I'd even take Kyler. Might not play at all this year.
Why would you? I
But
wouldn't.
then you look at the rest of the teams. I'm taking them way over Sam Howell. I'm taking them over Daniel Jones. I'm taking over Justin Fields. I'm probably taking them over Jordan Love has shown flashes, but I'd still probably
I'm
take
taking him over
Baker.
Jordan Love. Yeah, Jordan Love
Yeah,
has proven why there were doubts coming into the year so far now.
yeah. I'm taking him over Desmond Ritter. I'm taking him over Bryce Young, which is,
How about
I mean,
that for the beginning of the year?
yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that. And then yeah, Gino, it's interesting. I think him and Gino are probably fighting it out for 7-8, for sure.
Yeah.
There's somebody in the comments screaming right now for some guy who played good for like 2 games.
Derek Carr. What about Derek Carr? They've been riding the defense. We talked about this. They're riding the defense down there in New Orleans.
Yeah, we didn't. I'm so glad we didn't buy into that hype because yeah, they've looked just mid as it can be. So
that's what I bought into it, but I bought into them mitting their way into a 9-8 division title with the defense,
which is still not out of the question. So
that's exactly what's happening through 5 weeks.
Other people being like Super Bowl contenders, it's like Michael Thomas is old. That team just isn't it anymore.
Their offense isn't going to get it done on the stretch.
Nope. All right, ready for some pump the brakes?
Bring it on, my friend. Bro, you got some good ones in here today.
I do. The Cowboys and Bills are the same as they always are. And by that, I mean 1, hot and cold teams. 2, teams that are going to win 10 games in the regular season and then also not win a playoff game.
Yeah. I'm definitely not pumping the brakes on Dallas. Like, I've meant to say this to a couple of my Dallas buddies this last week, but I felt like they had suffered enough after the 42-10 ass whooping that the 49ers gave them. And I know Michael Parsons was a little hurt about the George Kittle shirt situation. He's like, oh, don't worry if we see you guys again. I hate to be this guy, and maybe I'm overreacting, and I probably should have told you this before I came on here and said it in front of everybody. I think Dallas should probably try to worry about making the playoffs before they try to worry about running into the 49ers again. Let's fucking get there before you fucking worry about what's going to happen when you do get there. And here's a spoiler for you. The same thing that fucking happened Sunday is going to happen in the playoffs, unless Christian McCaffrey's taking snaps at quarterback like he was in the fucking NFC title game last year. As far as the Bills, yeah, and it's
I've just never seen a team where last week everyone's like Josh Allen MVP, he jumps up, he's like the favorite to win MVP, and you were like, what? He's the favorite to win MVP?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then all of a sudden it just crashes. They can't beat Jacksonville, which I do think it's slightly unfair that Jacksonville stayed there a whole week, but the argument is then made like Buffalo, there's nothing stopping Buffalo from flying out there on like Monday or Tuesday and getting acclimated themselves. So
yeah, and that's what teams are doing, because I remember the last time, firstly, before Baltimore plays on Sunday in London, do you know Baltimore's only played 1 game out there before? They are 0-1. They got dubbed. I think it was Jacksonville, actually, if I remember right. They got dubbed like 44-7 in that game. Guess who threw the only passing touchdown in that game for the Baltimore Ravens? It's a name that you should know well, but it's not a name you're going to probably pull as a
RG3.
Ravens. Ryan Mallett, the only Ravens quarterback to throw a touchdown in London. Ryan fucking Mallett.
When was he was he Joe Flacco's backup?
Yeah, he was Flacco's backup the year he tore his ACL. The year that we got Ronnie Stanley in the draft, actually.
It's kind of the same guy, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah, it's just actually no, I was like just a 6'7" version of Joe Flacco's 6'6", but
Ryan Mallett, Arkansas. There you go.
Yeah, as far as Buffalo goes, yeah, I've never seen a team succeed and struggle so much by one guy's hands. And it is I've never seen such a talented team live and die by their quarterback more than they live and die by Josh Allen. If he plays great, they drub teams by 40. If he throws 3 picks, they lose by 20. And it's like,
and they're so up and down with him because there's always this talk of like, oh, is this Brady Manning in the AFC? And it's just not because of, you know what I mean? Because Josh Allen is too wavy, and then he has yet to get it done in big games. Like at least Joe Burrow has beaten Patrick Mahomes in a game that like actually
in the
matters.
Playoffs. Yep.
Yeah, not in a regular season game. In the playoffs when it matters, he's done it. Whereas we've yet to see Josh Allen. I mean, they made the one AFC championship run, right? And they lose in that overtime thriller, and it was just disappointing. But we haven't seen Buffalo get back to that level or get close to that
Not
level.
even close. I don't and I don't know, obviously, the record off the top of my head, but like Joe Burrow's done something that Josh Allen's never done. And that's one, beat Kansas City in the playoffs, but also win a game in Arrowhead Stadium. I don't know that off the top of my head. I'd be
Probably
pretty solid to guess that Josh Allen's never won a game in Arrowhead Stadium, and Joe Burrow did that, and he did it in the AFC title game to get to the Super Bowl, right? So, yeah, as far as Buffalo goes, yeah, they are probably headed down the same track that they always are. It's going to take them getting hot at the right time, and I can't really bet on that,
You were very wrong there, unfortunately. Not in a playoff game, but Josh Allen is 2-1 against the Chiefs.
In Arrowhead?
In Arrowhead specifically.
Wow.
They've never I guess okay, that's oh wow, he's 2-1 versus the Chiefs. Is this regular season? What is this? What am I looking at here?
Are you looking on StatMuse?
Yeah, God,
I love StatMuse.
It's great, but it's also horrible at the same time.
Yeah, because it just doesn't pull the things that you want it to pull.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I'm guessing this is regular. It has to be regular season because they lost. But yeah, he beat them twice in the regular season. They lost at home when they played him in the regular season. So, yeah, it has to be regular season. That cannot be playoffs. But
yeah, he has beat him in Arrowhead at least once. Yeah. I'm just reading a story where he beat him 24-10. So
yeah,
or 24-20. So
make StatMuse free again.
Sorry about it, but yeah, nonetheless, he hasn't done it in a playoff game, and we all know where the AFC is going to run through. It's going to run through KC for the foreseeable future, most likely. May not run through it this year, but it doesn't mean that you're going to avoid 15 in red. He might be 15 in white for that game, but he's damn sure going to play like 15 in red.
True.
So yeah. As far as Dallas goes, sorry guys, it's the same thing as it always is. I mean, we just found it out in week 5 instead of week 8, like week 9, like we did last year. So,
all right, next one I got for you. Joe Burrow is back. It's official. He's him again.
Definitely pumping the brakes here. Not a guy to react off of one game, even if that game would have been stellar. Well, who did they play? I don't even remember who it was.
Arizona.
Yeah. No. I think it takes a lot more. Even if it was a good team, right? It was Philly, and he played great. Yes, I feel a lot better about saying yes at that point. But again, it's one game. And when you're fighting injury, especially when you're fighting injury, one game means dick all, because if you tweak your ankle at practice this week, we're right back to square one, right? So it's hard to sit here and say that a guy's back after one game. I don't think he's definitely not back to the level that he was, right? Because the level that he was the second best quarterback in the league and the only guy to truly challenge for Patrick Mahomes' crown as the best quarterback in the game. That is one thing that Joe Burrow does have going for him, right? Is he is the only guy that I feel like I've ever taken seriously in that argument. But no, he is not back there. Good sign for Bengals fans. Bad sign for literally everybody else in the AFC, because I can't stand that guy and that team. But back on the right track, yes. Is he back? No. It's going to take a lot more than 1 week against the Cardinals for me to be like, Joe Burrow's back, right? I need the... Because he also has got to get the swagger back. I'll tell you that. Like, I mean, that is part of Joe Burrow's mantra, right? Like the aura that he carries, the dread, the outfits he wears to games, all this Joe Shiesty, the nicknames, everything. We're definitely not back to that yet. We may get Joe Burrow back. We may have gotten Joe Burrow back last week. Joe Burr and Joe Shiesty have not returned yet. They haven't shown up yet since the Super Bowl, really.
All right, next one I got for you here. Lions versus the Bucks should be the game of the week next week. FanDuel right now has the Lions -3 at Tampa Bay. So they think it's going to be a close little battle there.
I mean, I'll talk about it a little bit more in my bets. I don't think it's going to be the game of the week. Should it be? Is that what you said? Should it be game Bucks Lions?
Should be the game of the week. Not a ton of games. I mean, Dallas Chargers, obviously. Monday Night Football is kind of a bigger match.
That is actually that's I think a more interesting, at least storyline game. Who's the better play caller, Kellen Moore, or the guy that replaced him?
Seattle at Cincy would also probably be in the argument for that.
Yeah. Two underachieving teams trying to get back on the right track there.
49ers Browns, but I don't know if I'd call that. Yeah, I don't know if I'd put that in that same category. But
yeah, no. It's hard to disagree with that one, honestly, just because there's not any games that are really jumping off the page. But like, nah, maybe it is. Maybe I'm underrating a 3-1 Buccaneers team, but I think the Lions are going to handle business. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I do feel confident about the bet that I have that I'm obviously showing where it's going to land at for me. But
this is definitely like it's interesting, right? Like I think it's a team. The Lions are hyped right now, and that's typically a bad sign for Detroit. They typically don't do well when they're this hyped up. So, to me, throws a little bit of a red flag of being like, I'd be a little cautious around.
It's a larger red flag because damn well if there's anybody that loves knocking over overhyped teams, it's Baker Mayfield and that 3-1 Buccaneers team right now.
He plays well into the underdog factor. So to me, that storyline is interesting because I think if Detroit wins, it further cements kind of, hey, this team could be legit. And then if Tampa Bay wins, I think it puts them in a serious conversation of like, how good is this team actually? So
yeah, I think we have to really take them seriously if they win this game. Like right now, I'm like, meh, I don't know. 3-1 early bye week. I don't know how I feel about it. They beat the Lions this week. We're gonna have some serious conversations next week. That's for sure. Yeah.
So, all right, next one I got for you. I know I say I hate talking about the Cowboys all the time, but I thought this was an interesting conversation.
It is.
Is Micah Parsons overrated? There was a lot of talk after last year that he was LT 2.0. He's a lock to win Defensive Player of the Year. There was a lot of this kind of conversation for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily saying that it was, not deserved at the time. Micah Parsons this year has not been as impactful probably as we were hoping.
Yeah.
He is 18 tackles, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumbles. He doesn't look like the force that he once was for sure.
Yeah. I will say as far as the LT 2.0 and take that out, lock for Defensive Player of the Year, especially if you're talking about like he's a lock for Defensive Player of the Year this year. Yeah. Yes. Not pump the brakes. Massively overrated. There are so many good edge rushers. I think that might be the hardest position to sit down and call. If you're like, give me your top 10 edge rushers, and you ask 5 different people, you could have a list of 15 to 16 guys that pop up in that top 10. Like there are a lot of good edge rushers.
I think outside of the top 2, I think it's really like the list kind of opens up. I think TJ Watt, I still think he's a top 2 edge rusher, right? I don't think there's any doubt about that. Sacks this year are down, oddly down. TJ Watt obviously taking the league by storm, 8 sacks. Khalil Mack is still second, and he had 6 sacks. He did it all in one game, and he's second right now in season stack.
I thought he had 5 in that game. Do you have all 6 in that game?
Oh, maybe he had 5. Sorry, you might be right.
Still 5 of 6 in one game is nuts.
One game, and that puts him second right now. God, that just didn't feel right to me.
It's actually insanity. But again, like when you sit down and you start talking about these edge rushers, like,
no, he had all 6 in one game.
That's disgusting. That's like tied for second most in a game. Derek Thomas holds that record at 7. But like if you want to sit here and you're like, who's the best chance to win Defensive Player of the Year, right? Let's just look at pass rushers because we know that's what's going to be probably the guy that's going to win it without, barring any ridiculous season anywhere else. Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, Myles Garrett, right? The guys you mentioned, TJ Watt, right? Micah Parsons in that conversation. You get into the underrated guys, Danielle Hunter, Max Crosby. Yeah. Max Crosby, I think, is massively underrated.
You think he's underrated? Interesting. I think he's properly rated. I think he gets talked about enough. I just don't know if he's special.
Some people overrate him and some people underrate him. I definitely see that part.
Like, I think he's more kind of like, there are people who are high on him, but there's definitely people who are too low on him. So he's kind of just.
I'm higher on Max Crosby. The thing for Micah is, and a thing that Micah Parsons, or not Micah, that you could kind of tip your hat towards him a bit is that they don't really have a great edge rushers around him, right? It's very easy to single him out. Why is Nick Bosa and the 49ers edge rusher or just pressure so good? Because they can attack you from so many different angles, right? They've added Javon Hargrave in the middle of that line. You have Bosa. You can send pressure from all these different spots. Max Crosby has done a great job, despite Chandler Jones not being there, not really having a great secondary edge rush, of still keeping his name in that conversation, right? Whereas Micah has kind of faded without having a guy to kind of draw attention away from him. So that's a big need for Dallas right now, I think, is complimentary edge rush. Please, God, don't go sign anyone from New England. That's not what that means at all. But build your rush around Micah Parsons like they have done around Matt Judon. That's where you can really separate a guy from 14 to 15 sacks to nearing the sack record at 20 and 22, So is Micah Parsons overrated? Yes, because I think we did get a little bit too much on the hype train last year.
Yeah.
Now, as far as potential goes, no. He is probably the freakiest athlete on the defensive side of the ball because he's just as talented as a lot of those edge rushers are, and he runs a 4.4.
This is going to sound nuts, but you're making the point I was hoping you would make. If you had to pick a defensive player to start your defense with right now, to say Micah Parsons isn't crazy, right? Like I would say Micah Parsons is easily a top 5 out of everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most people would say TJ Watt, and I think Micah Parsons would be the second or third pick. Probably the second pick, because I would like
just
to say
based off age.
There isn't those corners that there was at one point where you're like, oh, that's the kind of corner I have to have. He's going to shut down every number one. Yeah. There used to be guys like that. There isn't anyone who comes to my mind immediately anymore.
No, I mean, like Pat Surtain was like that the last 2 years. Like I do think Pat Surtain was entering that conversation. He's had a down year so far this year,
So, but like I think we can say that he is that level of talented. He is that level of potential. But at the same time, I can also say we overrated him at the start of the year. So.
Yeah, because you're gushing about potential. At the end of the day, potential is all on paper.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it does not bring anything. Potential doesn't do anything on the field. Ask Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah.
So.
Man, I love that Jamarcus Russell story.
Just dropped it in there. Did you see Mike McDaniel talking about because he was the quarterbacks coach for Cleveland when Johnny Manziel got drafted, and he was talking about it on a show this last week. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Great stuff. You have to track that.
It was. I do think I saw what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. The other interesting thing, I'm glad you brought up Johnny Manziel. Jason Garrett went on the Dan Patrick show today, and they were talking about that draft, and Dan asked him, like, did Jerry Jones want to draft Johnny Manziel? And he's like, yes, that idea was brought up to the group. The consensus in the room was Zach Martin. And he's like, I think we're all very happy we took Zach Martin.
Talk about even just avoiding Johnny Manziel, you're like, yes, we did good. You drafted a Hall of Famer to boot. That's
he was mentioning some of the guys they wanted, and you're like, okay, it's easy to say that in hindsight. Just like we said before, where he was like, yeah, we were looking at some of the defensive guys in that class, and it was like he listed like 3 of the best. I can't remember who the Minnesota linebacker was that he said. Wasn't Perkins. It was the other one that was
Kendricks.
Good. It wasn't Kendricks.
Kendricks?
It was the other one. Anthony Barr was the other one.
Anthony Barr. Which,
Anthony Barr.
Surprisingly enough, ended up in Dallas anyways at the end of his career. But
yeah, he talked about some guys, and he was like, yeah, it came up, and we wanted defense, but then defense was an option, obviously, at that point. Like, because like a lot of the defensive guys had gone, and he was like, then he said Manziel, and I think the room really talked him off that ledge and was like, we should take Zach Martin instead.
Thank God.
And Zach Martin's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like, so good on you guys. So I thought that was an interesting story that he was openly willing to admit that Jerry Jones did bring up taking Johnny Manziel.
Yeah. I don't think it's I've got my own opinions about Jerry Jones. I don't think they'll win a Super Bowl while he's alive. My full honest opinion about Jerry Jones is that he would rather go 10-6 and lose in the first round of the playoffs his way, in Jerry's way, than he would rather be alive and watch that team win a Super Bowl somebody else's way.
I've never fully understood the argument. Like, I think he's actually a really good GM, but I think he's a terrible when it comes to coaches. And I think
Yeah,
ultimately that's his flaw, because
I agree.
I don't think there's been a better he's probably a top 5 GM in the league right now, because he's taken CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, he traded for Brandon Cooks. He is just flipped guys who were going to get expensive, and kind of like Amari Cooper. He got
The
something
only
from Amari
the only
Cooper.
true mishandle I can say is like La'el Collins wasn't great, right? Like choosing
Yeah.
Tyron Smith, injury riddled Tyron Smith over a La'el Collins. But at the end of the day, when I sit there and talk about that move, La'el Collins is a free agent right now, and he has
Yeah.
been for 2 weeks, and nobody's picked him up. There's obviously something there.
Yeah. I will say, I did say they got something for Amari Cooper. That was a lie. I think they got like a 6 for
Yeah,
Amari
it was like
Cooper.
a fifth and a sixth for
Yeah,
Amari,
it
but they
was
didn't
nothing.
pay him. But
But
now
he
you
has
look at
brought a
that offense.
lot of talent in on that offense, like a
Yeah,
lot of talent. So
he's
I just think
drafted
he
well,
hires
right?
terrible coaches. Yeah, he's drafted pretty well. So better
Hit
than
on
most.
like Travis Frederick too was a great hit in the late round. Third round center, picked him at
Yeah.
30. Short career, but talent wise, Hall of Famer, really. Like just only played 10 years, so
So I think people are a little hard on Jerry Jones sometimes. I think it's because he's in the news all the time, and there's a lot of fans who hype him up. Like, he builds high quality rosters, just hires the wrong coach to coach the teams is the
yeah.
issue.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll never ever understand the McCarthy hire because of Jason Garrett. You moved on from Garrett for reasons A, B, and C, and then you're like, who to replace him with? Mike McCarthy, who had the same
Yeah.
issues A, B, and C, except he had a more talented quarterback when he had the
I
issues.
don't think, I don't think the McCarthy hire is as bad as some people make it sound, but we've talked about that hire like 25
Yeah,
times,
yeah.
so I don't
Again,
want to
it's
spend
the
too much time on it.
expectations is why I think it's a bad one.
Yeah. Cool. We're gonna jump into bets of the week.
I was like, please get us off this before I start talking
Yeah.
about it.
That's why I did that. All right, smooth
Holy shit.
transition. Oh, a hole in the conversation. Moving on before we talk about Mike McCarthy again for 6 hours.
Oh man.
If you or anyone you know is struggling with a gambling addiction, contact the Problem Gambling Helpline at 800-522-4700. Professionals are available 24 hours a day to take your call. Help is available at no cost to the problem gambler or their concerned others. Rough week for me last week, going 1-2, drops my record down to 7-8. I had it early on, and then I've kind of lost it. Took Colts plus 2.5. That was my only bet of the week that hit. Broncos minus 1.5 versus the Jets. I'm done with the Broncos.
Yeah, you can't touch them.
I can't touch them anymore. It's kind of becoming the team that I'm like, yeah, they might turn it around. They should beat the Jets. They're a better team.
Cincinnati was my team for that, where I was like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah, and I'm like, fuck that. I'm not touching it. Falcons versus Texans over 41.5 did not hit. They scored 40 points. Slow start for that game, unfortunately. I believed in CJ Stroud and then the Falcons offense to kind of, amp things up and get it going faster than it ended up getting. 40 points, missed that by 1.5. So
It's rough.
that's one of those ones you just take it on the chin. You go, you know what? I would have probably bet it. I'd bet it again if I didn't know you know what I'm saying. Not that bad of a bet. Close line. So
Yeah,
I'll
close.
take those losses. So 1-2 for me last week.
Yeah, for me, a rough week by the odd week standards for me. I went 2-1 last week. It's the first loss I've had on the odd weeks in the NFL. I was 6-0 going in for weeks 1 and 3. I'm 9-5-1 overall, so I've had a damn good year, all things considered. Now, obviously, going in, fade every pick that I have this week. I've been noticeably rough on the even weeks. So I actually need to just go in there and put my record on odd and even at this point because it's becoming a thing. San Francisco minus 3.5 versus Dallas. That was pretty easy cash on that one.
Yeah.
Felt confident about that one going in that defense is going to handle business. Houston plus 1.5 versus Atlanta was another close one. That's the one that missed for me. Obviously, Atlanta won that game by 2. If I take Atlanta minus 1.5, I win that one. But Houston plus 1.5. I thought that CJ Stroud was going to tear it up a bit more. I think if yours hits, mine hits because I think CJ Stroud in that offense is the one that takes you over your over mark and gets me the win as well.
Yeah, we talked about the 1.5 bets all the time because it's like it's telling you it's a pick 'em. You can kind of go either way. Atlanta wins by 2. Like, it's so dang close to hitting right there. It's so close. And I thought Houston was going to win that game for a good chunk of it. So
Yeah. So again, I think if you go 2-1 this week, I sit at 3-0 again with the Houston win there. But that was the one that missed for me. And then Kansas City -3.5 versus Minnesota made me sweat a lot more than I wanted to be truthfully honest with you.
Yeah.
But thank God for the guys in the striped shirts because the Chiefs got another win. Let me touch on that for a fucking second because I haven't got a chance to talk about that here. I cannot stand. I'm about to mute the words Chiefs officials, probably Taylor Swift while I'm at it to boot. I can't stand 31 fan bases in the NFL because they're just pointing every time that there's a missed call or whatnot. They're like, oh my God, they're rigging it for the Chiefs and Taylor Swift. Same thing. Hey, Chiefs fans, you're not immune from this. I cannot stand all of you guys that are like, oh, they called the holding call on Christian Darrisaw, so are they rigging it for the – or they called the holding call on Jawan Taylor, are they rigging it for the Vikings now? Dude, I'm going to stab all of you. You're all getting stabbed. It doesn't matter. Nobody's immune from it. I hate all NFL fans. Anybody who's tweeted about the Chiefs and the officials in the last 2 weeks, die.
Yeah. All right. Simmer down there a little bit. But
can't stand it. But
yeah, it is overhyped. I mean, as a longtime Patriots fan, like I do remember in the peak years of our dynasty, people were like, oh my God, Brady and the refs, Brady and the refs. I think it's part of being successful is the smaller mistakes that are out of their control are magnified, and it's like, oh, see, the NFL wants them to win. So
yeah,
I don't think the officiating in that game was as atrocious as everyone wants it to be.
The Jets one was worse than last week was for sure.
Yeah.
And again, at the end of the day, you'll always hear this from us being sports guys, being around the game. If you don't want the games decided by the referees, win by more than 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's
God, yeah, Jesus.
Simple as that. You don't. I don't want to get screwed by a call in the fourth quarter. Score more points in the first 3. I don't know what you want me to tell you.
Oh, the overtime rules are so dumb. It's like you literally had an hour of football to score more points than the other team, and you couldn't do it. You don't get to then complain about the rules being, they're not fair. It's like, come on, be a grown up. Like you have 60. There's plenty of opportunity. Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah,
that is
the perfect. That perfect example is always that Rams Saints no call on the PI, right? Everybody points out like Saints should have went to the Super Bowl, right? They got screwed out of that game. Again, folks, was it the worst missed call in NFL history? Yes. What that headline doesn't tell you is that the Saints won the coin toss and had the ball first in overtime, and they didn't score.
Yeah, they still had a chance to win it. Yeah.
There it is. They had the chance to close it, and they didn't, right? So that no call then becomes fuck all at that point. But
hey, just win. Like, what's the problem here? Stop whining about everything else.
If you want to win football games, score more points than the other team. Simple as that. Even better, score more points than that team in regulation.
I just need Carolina to win 2 games and the Patriots to lose the rest of theirs. That's all I'm hoping for at this point. I'm now an active fan of whoever we're playing that I hope they beat us because
I think you're taking Bo Nix 1 overall.
Stop talking.
There it is. I had to slip one in.
Moving on, we are going to go ahead and jump into this week's picks. I'm taking Jags -4.5 versus the Colts. Coming back into London, it's going to be a little bit jet lagged, but I, unlike someone in this room, or this conversation, is not a Gardner Minshew believer at the level of someone else. So, I just don't think the talent's there. What I saw out of Jonathan, I think Jonathan Taylor will play more. I think he'll still be rusty. Jags are just a better team. I'll take them -4.5.
I like this bet, but my crystal ball says you're 2-1 and this is your loss just because it's Gardner Minshew.
It might be
just for the irony. But
just for the irony. Falcons -2.5 versus Commanders. Again, it's one of those games. It's a pick 'em. The show's coming out on Friday. This is one of those bets I'd actually wait until Saturday and hope the line comes down because I feel like a lot of people are going to take. Yeah, Commanders are going to take +2.5, and then hopefully you can get the Falcons at -1.5. I just think the Falcons are a slightly better team. So I'm leaning that way. 49ers Browns.
That's my question. Well, yeah. If they're -2.5, they're probably at home. I can't imagine that.
I think
-2.5 on the road.
It's a great question. Atlanta is at home, so you get Atlanta at home.
I wish we would save all of our picks because I would love to see if there's been a week where one of us hasn't bet on the Atlanta Falcons game because I know I have the last 2 weeks for sure. So
and I like to bet on them too. I like betting on the Colts too. So I bet bet against or for the Colts. I don't know why. It's just I enjoy them. This is actually like the first week in a long time I'm not taking a Texans over, and I almost took it again. Like I was like, it's like if this line wasn't so ridiculously low, I would have taken that. 49ers versus Browns, over 35.5. I'm guessing it's supposed to be bad weather. That's why this line is as low as it is.
I think it's just because you have two of the top defenses in the NFL. Is probably why that line is
Yeah.
so low. But again, I'm trusting, you know.
I think this is one of those games where the Browns are going to score 10 points and the 40. I think that my guess of the score is 49ers 28, Browns 10. So
Yeah.
I think if it hits, it's going to be tight. This is going to be one of those close bets, but I just trust in the fact the abilities the 49ers are going to have to score the score. So
Yep, I will agree with you there because Baltimore did it. Like, as much as I talked about Dorian Thomas Robinson, Deshaun Watson not being a thing, I did. I don't want to touch on it too much, but do you see David Njoku's Instagram post of the injuries, the burns?
no,
You
I
haven't
have
seen
not.
that, dude. First of all, try to find it if you can. The fact that that guy suited up for an NFL game 2 days after that is fucking insanity. And I do think they were talking about on the Pat McAfee show that the fact that Njoku went out there and played that game the way that his face looked that he posted today or yesterday, and that Deshaun Watson decided to sit because his shoulder was a little sore, doesn't speak great for your team's quarterback.
Franchise quarterback there.
Yeah, but moving on, I do like that because again, like when it comes down to these things, you're betting on the good parts of teams, and I do trust the Niners to get up and down because Baltimore put up 27 on that defense, you know. So, into my picks for the week: New Orleans -1.5 versus Houston. CJ Stroud and the boys have been hot, right? They struggled a bit last week. Again, this is me banking on their defense really kind of buckling down. And again, 1.5 is basically a pick 'em. I do think it's funny that we always say that despite us both hitting
and
on
losing
the
on that.
opposite.
Yeah.
We've lost on them and we've won like if I were to pick Houston +1.5, we've hit with a Houston +1 and lost that before. So I'm trusting. I think New Orleans defense is going to give CJ Stroud some issues, but maybe he turns to Josh Allen and just pumps it out after a struggle week against Atlanta. Hopefully that's not the case. I'll jump down just to get them in order here. Detroit -3 versus Tampa Bay. Is it -4? Did I write that wrong or is it -3?
What did I say earlier? I definitely said.
I thought you said 4. That's why I'm kind of drawing it into question now.
No, I think I said. Oh no, it's 3. I said 3 earlier. I think.
Okay.
But yeah, it's
Okay.
3.
I'm trusting to Detroit to take care of business. This is partially me not taking Tampa Bay fully serious, and again, when I look at the full offense of it, the full scope, I think Detroit is just going to be able to get up and down the field a little bit more. Tampa's defense has still been an issue, and it's not a talent issue. They have all the talent in the fucking world. They have Shaq Barrett and all these guys. Their secondary is a bit banged up, but I think Ben Johnson could scheme up a pretty damn good defense. And at that point, I'm relying on Baker Mayfield in the shootout, and we have a lot more faith in Baker through 5 weeks than we thought we would. I don't know if I have enough confidence to say, yes, I'll take Baker Mayfield in a shootout against Jared Goff with Ben Johnson as an OC, especially the way that David Montgomery's been running the ball as well. And then my last pick here, Seattle and Cincinnati over 44.5. Not going to lie to you, I was stretching for a third pick. I had you guys +2.5 versus Vegas, which again, that's just me thinking that Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to do anything versus the Patriots. I don't hate Baltimore -4 versus Tennessee across the pond, but again, we haven't been able to put anybody away, and to our expectations, Tennessee has exceeded what we thought that they were going to be so far this far in the year. But I'm asking each team to score 22, 23 points here. I think
it's obtainable. It's doable.
Like especially and again, if Joe Burrow is back, right? If I'm wrong on pump the brakes, they should be able to put up 35 of this by themselves, right? So
yeah.
Seattle
defense is very underrated. I think it's one of those ones because they don't have as many. Treek Woolen's a really good corner. Witherspoon maybe isn't the best corner out of last year. I mean, Gonzalez was playing better than him, but I think more time with Witherspoon, I think will only benefit him. So
I agree.
I do think that defense, and they get pressure by just having everybody covered. So
yeah, it's going to take a team effort, but I mean, if Jamar Chase can show up again, the Bengals have a pretty good shot at being able to get up and down the field. That's the big matchup to watch. And I know that people have been talking about social media. They're throwing jabs at each other. Jamal Adams is back. Hopefully he plays for more than a series this week before getting a concussion. But again, I'm trusting that that's going to be a dogfight at the end of the day. It's either a dogfight or Cincinnati hangs 35, and then all I'm asking for is 2 touchdowns from Geno Smith and the boys at that point. So that is it for the bets of the week. You got anything else for these people before we get out of here?
If you made it to an hour 40, we greatly appreciate you. And if you know anyone you think you'd like to show, feel free to share it with them. So
yeah, pass it along, post it on your stuff if you want to. Play it at work if you got control of the aux cord every once in a while. We would greatly appreciate all those things. So that's going to do it for episode 9 as we head into week 6 of the NFL season. Until episode 10, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you guys then.